Terrible Thing to Waste, Environmental Racism and Its Assault on the American Mind by Harriet A. Washington. Giving this book a solid 5 out of 10, but not because you think. So this book, let's get into it first. The big summary of why I think it is that way is because her evidence is amazing. That's what gets her the 5 out of 10. But the reason it doesn't get a 10 out of 10 and 5 books, it's only 5 points, is because I don't think she's a good writer or her editors did her dirty and didn't do their job well. Both of them were probably true, honestly. She went to a bunch of prestigious universities and whatnot, which Ivy universities aren't what they used to be. But anyway, I'm very open to the idea of environmental racism because, and not in the hippie. Environmental racism, the way she states it, is systemic racism that bleeds through on an environmental level and is still present due to policies from back then. And by back then, you could even refer to the redlining days of the early 2000s. So, or you could go all the way back to slavery. She lists a bunch of examples and she goes somewhat chronologically. Her evidence is amazing. Her research is fantabulous. It's very good. Okay. Fabulous. Fantastic. I was mixing fantastic and fabulous. Anyway, so she does a really good job at researching, and she finds a lot of evidence and a lot of things I didn't know about, and I actually took notes on it. I was like, oh, this policy probably needs a change. I'm going to do a deep dive because I annotated the whole book. This policy needs a change because it leaves things up to the individual. Like, for example, One Spot. Well, show you as an example. For example, One Spot, she talks about how there was this mother of a black son, and he was put into the school, and she knew he was very gifted. She knew he was very smart, and she wanted him to be tested because he was put in the lowest available classes right away for the dummies. And then after a lot of fighting to get him tested, she got him tested, and he instantly got placed in the higher intelligence faculties in the classes that range. Now, that's very interesting, right? And my annotation on that was the problem here is that you're leaving it up to the teachers and up to a few people to judge how smart this child is when they arrive. There is no policy, there's no federal or state policy that I have seen or that this book mentioned that a child, when they go into a school, has to be tested for intelligence. For example, when I came to this school district, they just said, okay, we'll put you in some class. And I also had to fight very hard to get it retested because that's extra money the school doesn't want to expend. Why would the school spend extra money on psychologists to do an IQ test? That's just extra cost and extra hassle. It took a while, and anyway, I'll talk about that another time. So, but then this doesn't prove systemic racism, then this proves systemic inequality. Or rather, leaving an opportunity for racism, right? Because within the system, you're leaving the opportunity that a racist person comes in and then gets the opportunity to act racist from within the system. But the system itself, therefore, is not racist, since that flaw has nothing to do with racism, since it does not prioritize nor like I had a hard time getting into honor classes too, and stuff, just because they didn't want to retake like let me do an intelligence test. Anyway, but that systemic racism means something very different from individual racism perpetuated through flaws in a system, but systemic racism would mean that you as an individual do not have impact over changing it, and that the system specifically targets a specific race and specific groups to disadvantage them. Meanwhile, if anything, that policy or lack thereof would be be a detriment to people moving from one school district to another. You could say that's immigrant behavior. You could say that's rich people behavior because they have the money to move all over. I mean, you can interpret that quite differently. So there's very different things, and a deep dive. I'm definitely going to do a deep dive because it's very interesting. Once I get my notes back, because I turned them in for my English class. Anyway, we're reading this book for English class. I didn't want to do the Handmaid's Tale for the second time. And I like stuff about toxins in the environment. I mean, if you go on my channel, you'll see tons of shorts about this plant eliminates toxins, and don't eat this, and don't have the phone too close to you, and like I have it a full arm length away from you right now. Anyway, um, so I think she has a lot of really interesting evidence that I really enjoyed reading about, but that she wasn't. And I'm not against the proposal that environmental racism might exist from prior policies that still exist to the modern day. The problem is just she's not a good writer, and her editors didn't do a very good job at cleaning up. Or who knows, maybe they did clean up a lot. But I'm giving her some credit. I'm saying that she did this amount of writing on her own very well, and then her editors just didn't do much. But who knows? Maybe it could be both. Maybe she and her editors weren't too good. But and then a lot of the examples, she has to go through chronologically, and a lot of the examples have either been fixed or are now no longer racist. The problems of race, but more problems of class, and have transitioned into that. Now here's the dichotomy of: would you say it is racist if it originated from racism, but now no longer is racism and it became more of a class war, but still is rooted in that because of economic disadvantages and whatnot? Or would you say there was enough opportunity to change economic status, and there's enough movement, socioeconomic movement available, and because of that, you could have the advantage to move, you could have the disadvantage to move down and up the socioeconomic ladder. And so, depending on how you fracture that dichotomy, she's right or she's wrong. But I just don't think it's written very well. Another example is when you talk about something systemic, you're talking about something that you can't change yourself. But when you start talking about the education system, and okay, I'll skip past that because not everyone has the luxury of being able to take off to homeschool and whatnot. However, bringing fetal alcohol syndrome, a whole chapter about it, that's entirely personal responsibility. It costs you money to get drunk. It costs you money. Now, she could have, and she was on the edge. This is what really made me angry and frustrated me in this book, because she had so much good stuff, and she was always like a millimeter away from making really profound statements, but then she didn't make them, and that frustrated me. One example is in the fetal alcohol syndrome chapter on the health effects of and the marketing towards Black communities and BIPOC communities and whatnot, affecting underage alcohol usage and other things. Is, well, first of all, it really is personal responsibility, and it costs money to get drunk. But aside from that, something very interesting and profound that she just plopped in there, and I thought she would elaborate, is that churches and substances are the two best industries in poor communities, and especially communities of color. And I thought she was going to expand on that, but she didn't. And what I would love to see is her to write at least another few sentences about how meaning and escapism have a lot of value in poor communities when you try to escape from a life that's very horrible, and when your mental health is impacted by all these environmental factors, and that this could drive a person to do this, to have a harder time getting a job, to have for their kids to experience mental retardation, to be more likely to be escapist, and for it to be a cycle. And do I think the government's going to save you? No, I really don't. And that's where this book fails, not in my personal policy, not on a book level. This is on a political scale and advice scale. If you give people advice, it needs to be something actionable. You can't tell people the rich people are the problem of it all, but they're not going to help you because they're rich, and we're not going to get it done because we're poor and we don't have the say. So there's no way out. There's no hope. And I think we need to be optimistic. And for example, something she did say quite often is a lot of toxins impact both rich and poor communities. Not poor communities mainly because they're poor, but they, like, for example, fluoride in the drinking water. You can advertise that to rich people and say, do you want to pay $80,000 for a reverse osmosis filter in your lifespan, or do you want to help us push through a policy that completely eradicates fluoride in the drinking water? And then that's how you get people, other people who have the resources to impact change, to help you with your problems indirectly by telling them, hey, I know I'm having a problem with it, but that's not why you should listen to me. You should listen to me because it's also your problem. And that's why you should fix it, for your sake, if not for mine. And there's a lot of actionable things that she could have put in there, and she was always on the edge of it. This is what frustrates me. There was so many interesting policy things and things in the environment that hurt us, and all these things that she was really on the edge. She was so much on the edge of talking about them. Oh, bro, my seasonal allergies are killing me, and the windows are closed. Anyway, it's not as bad as some other people I know. TV in the room. Sorry, completely distracted. But yeah, oftentimes she has really good evidence, but then she doesn't use it very well. And it's like, I'll see the evidence and I'll think she'll make this grand point, and then she doesn't. And that's disappointing to me about this book. It's just that the writing is bad, but the actual research and evidence and all like a lot of the points are really good, but she just doesn't know how to frame it into an argument. She doesn't know what her conclusion is. The most accurate description of this book is someone who really deeply researched a topic they cared about and put all the stuff in a book in a really long disorganized rant that they really were passionate about and wanted to tell you about, but they didn't really know what umbrella to put it under. So they just all kind of squashed it under there. And that's how I'd classify this book. And that's why it's a mid. It's interesting because of all those things. But I don't think it's very, like, it doesn't really change minds. But in terms of policy and evidence and all these different things, that's very interesting. In terms of school choice and how should happen when you go into a school, and prosecuting people who give minors alcohol when they know perfectly well that they're not allowed to, and all these things. That's a very interesting claim, and that's a very interesting argument, and I would love to read more about this argument in case, in fact, I have I ordered a few books at the library talking more about environmental racism. This is more of a recent book because there's a lot of interesting things I usually don't hear about. Same because I'm sure if you go on my channel, I read philosophy, religion, sci-fi, fantasy books. Like, I don't read a whole lot of political books or scientific books or books on racism and LGBTQ and BIPOC and queer and LGBTQIA plus XYZ, the whole shtick. And it's very interesting because I usually don't engage with it. But yeah, I say read the book if you care about the topic. But if you don't really care about the topic and you're not very political and you're not gonna really get active in politics, then it really doesn't matter much to you unless you're poor, or you don't exercise, or you don't filter your water, or like. But at that point, get a book on like health advice, on a general book about health advice. Peter Attia's book is really good. It's his most popular one, the one on health span. So if you look that up, you'll see what I mean. But that's probably a top recommendation I have if you want to improve your health and live longer and have healthier children. And yeah, good luck to you all. God bless, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. And remember to be optimistic. Don't despair, because otherwise, what's the point? And I need to come up with an outro. But yeah, I'm gonna have a full, like an hour-long deep dive into this book if you want to see it. But yeah, with quotations and citations and all that stuff, all that fun stuff. Anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know how you took the book if you read it. Let me know if you read any of her other books. Just literally leave a comment about anything. I'm happy to engage. I mean, Joe Rogan and a lot of people say don't read the comments, but I love reading the comments because genuinely, oftentimes they're funny. I don't get a whole lot of hate comments, but yeah. So all the best of luck to you. I obviously don't know how to do an outro, and till next time.